Hi, everyone. Welcome to our talk about Atlassian's journey into microservices, platform engineering, and Compass. My name is Taylor Pechacek, head of product for Compass, and I've been with Atlassian for over 6 years. And I'm really excited to be here to share some of our internal journey that inspired numerous aspects of Compass.
I'm Andrew Boyagi, and I help to unlock the potential of software teams through platform engineering and through Compass. Before we get into our microservices journey, let's start with the decision to move to a distributed architecture. We think we know all the benefits. PMs, or heads of product, think it's easier to scale performance and resilience, and they love the fact that it helps you launch new features and products fast and safely. Managers love the boost to team engagement and team happiness. The individuals in those teams love the boost to productivity and the ability to work independently. It all sounds awesome, but what actually happens could be different to what we expect to happen. I'd like to share with you what we learned on Atlassian's journey. At the beginning of a microservices journey, key indicators all look really positive. DORA metrics are looking good, smaller chunks of code are easier to test and deploy, so quality and velocity look great. Compliance on a small piece of code is also a breeze, and all of this results in happy devs. However, as more and more of the organization starts to adopt a microservices architecture, complexity starts to increase. This is when software sprawl begins to be a challenge. Software sprawl occurs where in an environment we have a rapidly growing number of software components. And at the same time, these components are frequently changing. And of course, when you move to this type of architecture, a new team structure is put in place to support all of this. This means that traditional ways of working start to fail. As cognitive load starts to increase for development teams, we start to see a leveling of team effectiveness. Eventually, the organization reaches its complexity limit. This limit is essentially the aggregate amount of complexity each team needs to navigate when looking to interface with the rest of the company. When this happens, team effectiveness rapidly drops. But where does this complexity come from? The complexity is driven by an increased surface area over time. So think about a lot more information that the team needs to navigate. A lot more dependencies, new teams to engage with, changes, asks. All of these things make it harder for software teams to deliver quality software at speed. As collaboration norms start to break down, each team starts to slow down, quality suffers, and it causes the entire organization to be way less fun to work in. Within Atlassian, we learned that through our developer experience platform, Compass, we could actually lift that complexity barrier within Atlassian, enabling new collaboration norms and continuing the positive trajectory of teams that we saw at the beginning of this distributed architecture journey. Today, we're sharing our story with you so you can take advantage of our learnings and lift the complexity barrier within your own company using Compass. During our session today, we'll be switching between Atlassian's microservices story and how this resulted in the building and use of Compass. So Taylor will cover the stages of our microservices journey and what we learned along the way. And I'll share how each of these phases became a feature in our developer experience platform, Compass, and how this helped lift the complexity barrier.
All right, so let's start our journey by going back in time a little bit. The year is 2015, and Atlassian has Jira and Confluence Cloud running on a single tenanted architecture that wasn't really built to take advantage of the cloud. We were also seeing a ton of growth in our engineering teams, and together with this on-prem way of working meant our dev cycles were starting to suffer. This ultimately led to the decision for us to move to a cloud-native solution and a multi-tenanted architecture, which enabled us to explore microservices with an initial focus around key shared services that every team was using. Now, microservices here was not the primary goal, but rather a solution or a byproduct of what we wanted to achieve. So we started creating these thoughtfully, recognizing that we couldn't decompose everything, and we needed a model that would work together across monoliths and microservices together. So we started building new services and peeling some out of existing code bases, and we created a platform organization dedicated to building these shared services that would have a large impact. such as our identity or commerce systems, as a few examples. And as we started to decompose the technology, we also had to think about how our development teams, like identity, would be set up to be successful when both building and now operating these new services as well. They were taking on new responsibilities. This proved quite difficult, as many teams had not dealt with those operational responsibilities. We had limited or new tooling at the time, and our goals and standards were relatively unclear. However, these teams were not left to their own devices to recreate their own processes that would ultimately become a bunch of snowflakes. Instead, it was more of a you build it, you help run it model, with the platform engineering helping out. One of the areas that we started to struggle with this model in the early days was around reliability and dealing with incidents that may involve several different code bases owned by various teams. There were now several points of failure that could be the culprit, and tracking this down was becoming really frustrating and time-consuming because not only was it spread all over the place, but it was really inconsistently captured. So this is where our original service catalog starts to take shape, called Service Central. Put simply, we built a list of all the things and everybody who owns those things as our primary starting point. Now, consistency was key here, as it provided this kind of common, agreed-upon set of things or language to collaborate around, especially with incidents. Over time, this consistency has become critical to how we added automation, new workflows, and entirely new capabilities that helped our engineering teams that went way beyond incident management.
The creation of the component catalog was a pivotal moment in reducing cognitive load and lifting the complexity limit within Atlassian. In an environment where the number of components are rapidly growing and changing, a traditional CMDB just will not keep pace. The component catalog is team-owned, meaning each team has the autonomy to create and update their components whenever they need to. It's automated. It pulls information from across the environment, which reduces the toil for people to keep the catalog up to date. Ever wondered how many software components we've got within Atlassian? Not microservices, software components. I actually checked it this morning. It's 17,311. Anyone in Atlassian is able to search and filter our component catalog to find anything they need to know. And when I say anything, I mean anything. You can easily find out what the component is by looking at the description. You can see which team owns it. You can see how to contact that team via chat. And when you need to, you can see who is on call. We use smart links to connect information across tools, such as a link to the source code repository, links to the Jira project where the team track their work and where they collaborate, links to all the components documentation. You can see health and key metrics right there at a glance. And if that's not enough, you can dive right into the detail. For example, clicking on the Activity tab shows you all the activity, not only for the component that you're viewing, but for all up and downstream dependencies too. All the context on a software component in one place. But how does this help lift the complexity limit? Within Atlassian, the component catalog has driven an information on demand culture. Teams can self-serve information whenever they need it, and then when they do need to engage with another team, they do so with an established context. The catalog also brings together disparate tools. Our developers don't need to trawl through multiple tools to bring together information in the context of a component. Compass does all of that for them. The catalog has an easy-to-use interface, which reduces the overhead of needing to learn how to use multiple different tools. And of course, all of this results in a much reduced cognitive load for our software teams.
Love it. Okay, so let's jump back into our timeline a little bit here as we move forward. So Atlassian's microservices journey was well underway, with shared services owned by a central platform team, and even some of our product teams starting to build brand new services when thinking about a new feature or set of them. These initial teams were having quite a lot of fun, being able to independently deploy on their own and at much faster rates. And by now, some of our practices and tooling had caught up, like the Service Central example previously. Teams were feeling more and more confident in handling both the development and the operations for the areas that they owned. But the next challenge started to appear. We started to create a lot of things, 17,000 at this point. How do we maintain our health, quality, security across this increasingly diverse set of software components, our company's software supply chain, all playing some pivotal role in helping deliver value to our customers? Well, a couple tools I'm going to show you. First, we created a tool called Credo internally. Credo is the project name chosen for operational readiness across Atlassian. As part of launching a brand new service, Credo ensures through its checklist that all services delivered reach a certain level of service maturity before they launch, such that major problems could be avoided in the first place, making sure that the customer experience is always thought of first. The checklist here has helped teams think about how to scale, how to deal with failure, compliance, and much more. This meant any new service that we put into our stack was able to start with a high level of quality in the first place. So the second one we did was we created a linter tool, because we now had to keep those services healthy after they were created in a continuous way. Just like you have a linter helping you ensure code quality is kept high and you're using good norms, our service linter kept a good list of running checks to ensure various aspects of owning or maintaining that service are kept in a good state, and it held those people responsible. As a basic example, this was making sure the service descriptor file was formatted correctly, or the use of certain libraries to help with service-to-service communication or some centralized logging was being used by the services.
So the use of scorecards within Atlassian has enabled frictionless governance and compliance. What does that mean? Scorecards give delivery teams and governance teams what they need, without the usual misalignment in priority. Scorecards are automated, they're searchable, and they're as dynamic as the environment you operate in, creating a win-win for everyone. Automated and dynamic scorecards mean the information is always up to date, enabling governance by exception. So for example, a security team could filter to find components that are failing the data security scorecard. They could reach out to those teams to see what help they might need to bring things back on track. This is a big change from having to follow up from all teams to check if they're meeting their obligations. A governance team can shift their efforts to those teams who actually require assistance. From a delivery team perspective, they get the benefit of knowing upfront what's required of them. This helps prevent rework. There's nothing worse than getting to the end of a delivery cycle. You have a deadline, you meet it, high fives, about to go to production, someone comes along and says, oh, sorry, there's 5 or 6 things that you haven't done that you need to do for compliance purposes. You then need to go back to the beginning and redesign your solution. Knowing upfront what you need to do helps prevent all that. But how does this lift the complexity limit? Teams know upfront what's required of them, meaning less rework and better velocity. Governance teams get complete visibility across the landscape with up-to-date information always available. This means that there are fewer governance processes, which also leads to better velocity for everyone.
Such a powerful capability. So let's continue and look at the next chapter in our journey. Okay, so at this point, Atlassian has the centralized representation of all software components across the company and who owns them. We've also now have our platform team starting to provide a bunch of amazing tooling to help with keeping all these components healthy and secure. But let's flip this point of view, right? What about our individual development teams? How are they feeling about all these new requirements and overhead, right? Well, there's a lot more that they need to worry about now. This was causing an overload of information for the team lead and developers as they tried to stay on top of everything and be good citizens. Now, this was mostly manual and very time-consuming. So we did what any good engineering team would do. We automated and pulled together all the information into a single weekly report that the team could use to drive best practices and make decisions within their team. It helped save countless hours of toil and helped each team identify where they needed to take action and pull that back into their sprints to maintain some of the engineering health that they needed to worry about. This new pattern was a brilliant way to effectively scale our engineering team in a very decentralized way across thousands of engineers.
Promoting a healthy engineering culture across distributed autonomous teams can be a challenge. The checkups feature in Compass helps you do just that. Checkups provides a healthy engineering culture through 2 things: learning and continuous improvement. Think about the last time you sat in a team retrospective. Facilitator will say, what have we learned in the last 2 weeks? What went well? What could have been better? Then everyone sits around and tries to remember what actually happened in the last 2 weeks. Checkups provides teams with all the events and data related to the components they own, so they can have an informed discussion on what went well, what could have been better, and what actions they will take to continuously improve. In this way, teams are able to use data to reflect, to learn, and continuously improve. But sharing is caring. A weekly checkup summary is shared to provide an overview of activity across all the components that your team owns, as well as identifying areas which are low performing across your components and scorecards. This allows you to know what actions to take to better balance innovation and stability, as Taylor mentioned earlier. Leaders. This means you get a weekly pulse check into how your teams are feeling and how they've been performing.
Okay, so let's move closer to the present day. I'm really excited about this one. So at this point, right, Atlassian has a very broad, diverse set of teams working across our entire product suite. Our internal platform engineering team continues to grow, take on more diverse, complex needs. What Jira Software Cloud needs may be somewhat different than what Bitbucket needs. But still, there's a common core aimed at helping all software teams be more productive across the entire lifecycle. But with all those competing priorities and needs, they were starting to become a bottleneck. I mean, after all, they can only do so much. They're human. Teams across Atlassian were willing to help out. They were willing to find solutions themselves, but still struggled to contribute that back in a way that everyone else could leverage. So we asked ourselves, how could we let others contribute to the dev experience within Atlassian? Enter plugins. The team internally built a way to write individual apps that extend the user interface of our internal developer experience platform. And many teams stepped up to build various plugins, which were easily distributed and discoverable by all of Atlassians directly into the team, directly into those microservices. Some of these had humble beginnings and became widely used across the company as core functionality, spanning to help various teams and roles, not just our product development teams, but also support engineering, security engineers, and many others.
Extensibility is what makes Compass a developer experience platform rather than just another developer tool. Compass brings together all the tools that developers already use today. Each tool brings into Compass the information that developers need and provides it in the context of the software component they're interested in. The list of integrations already available is quickly growing. In fact, I spent much of this week with a whole group of Atlassian partners working on building new integrations between Compass and their applications. One of the already available integrations is Swagger UI. So let's say we have a team who's interested in leveraging the Bitbucket API. They can search for the Bitbucket component, they can click on Swagger UI, and they're given a list of all the available API commands. But extensibility doesn't just mean integrating with other existing apps. For as long as I've worked in technology, devs have been building tools to engineer their way around problems. I love this because nobody knows what developers need more than developers themselves. And it's slightly different in every organization. We've used Compass to enable developers to build what they need in a scalable way. Our devs can add what they need and it's available for use across the company, meaning everyone can take advantage of that functionality. Extensibility goes a long way to lifting the complexity limit. It brings together a whole bunch of dev tools into a single place and puts the information in the context of a software component. It allows developers to extend this functionality and easily scale it across the company. Now devs have what they need in context with little overhead. This makes devs happy.
All right, we finally did it. We got you flying cars. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at the future. What's coming up next for us? To quickly recap the mission with Compass, we want to unleash the potential of software teams, of engineering teams, by helping companies build and craft their own world-class internal developer experience with Compass. So let's take a look at what we're going to invest in next, kind of 4 broad categories. First, we're going to continue to make the catalog flexible, automated, and intelligent to give that single unified interface for engineering to collaborate around. We're going to continue to invest in DevOps health by improving visibility across large groups of companies and scorecards, and help individual teams identify problems with recommended actions that tie directly back into Jira software to close the loop. Templates will make it really easy to spin up new microservices and other software components in a single click so that the right thing to do is the easy thing to do. And lastly, we will continue to build public APIs, which everything you saw today has a public API behind it. We'll continue to build APIs for every feature we build in Compass and start to open up our marketplace to easily build or buy new capabilities and deploy them across your services and across your teams instantly. And this is something Atlassian knows a thing or two about within marketplaces and extensibility.
All right, so let's do a quick recap. Compass has been created to lift the complexity limit, helping teams create awesome, high-quality software fast. It does this in 3 ways. The component catalog reduces cognitive load so teams can find everything they need when they need it on demand. Scorecards and metrics enable frictionless governance, reducing the need for manual, time-consuming processes. And Extensibility and the app marketplace give developers a way to create the platform that they need to unlock their own potential.